I wrote down as I was reading your book, this is a quote from you. I felt ashamed for being so sensitive, too deep, too soft at the core. I thought caring made me lesser. And I have to tell you, that I wrote it down because it struck me. Um, so I just wanted to share that.
I still get chills thinking about it. It's it's actually strong to allow that vulnerability to surface. And I think we all have it. Now, I know that we all have it. We all question ourselves. We all have those moments where we either do or we're about to fall down on the ground like I
Mhm.
did. It's a symbol of the human experience, and it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to wake up. It's an opportunity to say, okay, I am going through what I'm going through. I am who I am. I was made this way, and I need to at least embrace it and give it a real shot at becoming more of the kind of person that I want to be.
Welcome to this episode of Leadership Disrupted. I am thrilled today to present to you a gentleman by the name of TJ Jones. TJ is an author in the leadership space. He's a coach, he's a trainer, he's a subject matter expert in the field of leadership, but most importantly, he's just a good guy. He is a decent, good guy. And it'll take you a little while to buy that from me. I mean, I think after you hear from TJ for a bit, you'll have that sense of him as well. But when TJ and I first became aware of each other and his book, The Caring Warrior. In fact, just that I don't forget, because sometimes I have been known to forget. I want to highlight this is TJ's book. It's called The Caring Warrior, available where fine books are sold anywhere. I downloaded mine onto my Kindle from Amazon, and I will eventually ask TJ to just tell us the story of how Gayle King got a hold of TJ's book and ended up getting your book some national recognition. But for now, TJ, let's just start with you introducing yourself. Uh, Give us a quick bio, quick background, and then we'll dive deep into the spirit behind your book.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be on the show and to be getting to know you better and to share some of my experiences. I got into the teaching world, and I was a coach. I taught high school English, writing, drama, and I've just always been drawn toward helping others to become more of who they already are. And I love that process. And it's really a gift to be able to do that. And oftentimes we're our own worst sort of critic and enemy. And I think ultimately I've discovered that my calling is to help people get past some of those hurdles. Indeed, I've had many of my own. And so I made my way into the corporate world and sales, got into leadership pretty early on in my career, fortunately. And I learned a lot along the way. Ultimately got into training and development, sales training, clinical training, and that led to an opportunity to develop leaders at every level and all that goes with that. 360 assessments and teaching different styles of coaching, competency models, and a lot of the technical stuff. But again, it's been those classroom types of discussions, the one-on-one discussions with people that drive me. And I just show up every day hoping that I can serve a little bit, and help people in some way.
Well, one of the interesting commonalities you and I have, TJ, is both of us made a transition from uh, one career into a sales focused job, sales career, not necessarily by choice. I didn't grow up thinking, yes, that's what I want to be. I want to be a salesperson. However, I think I've shared with you. I was in the U.S. Navy. The Navy. After I got out, I was left in San Diego without much. I mean, back then there wasn't much in the way of career development. It was. Or even guidance, like, okay, you're getting out. Pretty much it was, okay, you're gone now. And so now I was in
Yeah.
San Diego trying to decide what I would do next. And because I'd been a nuclear engineer in the Navy, I worked briefly at the San Onofre nuclear power plant just north of San Diego, and it just wasn't me. I just knew it wasn't me, and I was looking. I needed to make more money, and I needed just something to give me something. And so not out of inspiration, honestly, just out of need, I took a sales job. I had never sold for a living, but I had, I guess, enough confidence. Although I didn't really, the idea of selling did not appeal to me. But it took. I mean, I followed orders. I did what they told me to do, and I seemed to do okay with it. And as I look back, and there's a reason I'm bringing this up, because you made your own transition from English teacher to a sales position. And I look at that transition, and today when I have younger people ask me for guidance where I don't know what I want to do, or I don't know what I can do right now. I don't know what I should do. AI is impacting so many different career possibilities. And when I say to them, look, first of all, you have to work just to eat, just to put a roof over your head. So if you are right now open to ideas and possibilities, it doesn't have to be your lifelong career, but I would suggest building a new skill set around influencing and selling. I look back, and it's one of the most impactful things that I did, where I learned what it takes to persuade. I learned what it takes to influence. I also learned what it takes to take a no, to take rejection. All of that. When you were talking before, even you though said, thankfully I moved beyond, or thankfully I moved on to leadership. And I picked up on that comment because it's not easy. And generally when I bring it up to people, there's a glaze over their eyes, like, no, this can't be the answer. This can't, no, give me something else. And yet I would love to hear your take on those early years and what that did for you, because I think it's good guidance, not for everybody, but for some people.
Yeah, I remember telling the leaders that were interviewing me during the process back then that if I can get high school kids excited about Shakespeare, I can sell. I can sell your products. And there was a part of me that did believe that. But I also, like you were saying, I never thought that I was going to be a salesman. Now, some people who knew me knew sort of that outgoing side of my personality may think otherwise, but it was intimidating. And to your question about people who are looking at the future, younger people who are considering what they want to do, there is so much to learn from being in a sales type of role or a customer facing type of role.
Yeah.
Because that is that human element, which as life has gone on, I realize is more and more important. Who we are and how we show up and how we connect with people is something that can't be replaced. That uniqueness of who each of us was made to be and that we should embrace is what connects you to people. And as I got out there and overcame some of those fears and insecurities every day. Yeah. And this is a time when we wore suits every single day, including to our meetings with our colleagues. I had to overcome some of that each day. And I started to realize that the people that I was interfacing with often weren't necessarily the buyer, weren't the ultimate decider, but they were human beings. And the more personal and the more open and friendly and warm I was, and myself, my authentic self, the better I did, and the more opportunities I had. And I realized that it's good to have your drilling and your messaging and the stuff that you want to learn about them, your customers, the buyers, in order to provide them with answers, provide them with solutions. That the more you're yourself and the more that you're comfortable in that skin, the more people respond to you. And it really is about comfort. And so many times you're competing with other services or products that are also pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's the human connection that can make the difference, and that ability to dialogue with people and ask questions and listen, those basic communication skills. Again, something that wouldn't be replaceable. And I often feel like young people who are, or anyone who's finishing their education or coming out into the world, to give something like sales or a customer facing type of role, give it a try. It's a really good way to cut your teeth. And I'm from a small town, and I was sent to New York City, and I was driving around New York City, getting honked at, not sure where to park my car, not really doing a good job of parking it, getting tickets and all. And it was just an amazing experience. And I worked with some great people, and I loved it. And I'll just finish that thought by saying that I was grateful to get into a role where I had a team, partially because that day-to-day grind was difficult. And I knew there were people that frankly would be better at it than me. And that teacher coach in me really did want to be working with a team, hiring people, developing them, and making my way around, and always being a learner. So amazing experience. I'm super grateful for it all.
I do think a sales position reveals a lot about a person that you may not always want to have revealed. Because I came from an engineering background, I wasn't particularly charming. I wasn't particularly people oriented. I followed orders and I followed process, and so for me, customers will do what they do for their own reasons, and in the end, that's the reality that you have to deal with. You have to confront the reality of how you're interfacing with people and whether it's working or not working. And probably the toughest and best conversation I ever had was with a manager who said, "Look, you've been here 9 months now, and honestly, we like you. You're a pretty nice guy." He said, "You are occasionally even like funny and humorous, but customers never see that. Customers see
Right.
this serious guy who shows up, and you know all the data, you know all the details." But he said, "Take a breath and try being a little charming. Just try lightening up a bit." And it was very, very hard. But that was where I hate to think now, I had to have someone instruct me to be more human, instruct me to be more of a person, a guy. But that's also the essence of the caring warrior, of your journey toward that. Even leaders, man, we live in a world where leaders are expected to be mercenary. They're expected to drive results, and not just in sales. Basically, business leaders, startup
Mhm.
leaders, everybody is under pressure. Could you just tell us a little bit about the lead up to that whole spirit behind the caring warrior, and what you experienced that brought you to that?
Sure. Well, uh, as I got into leadership roles, it was also a time in the industry that I spent most of my career in, where companies were merging. There were acquisitions, and that is no different today, incidentally. But this was a time of tremendous change. And I watched individuals, teams, organizations go through change that just was so troubling for people. It was so upsetting. And they weren't necessarily handled always the best way. And there were people that really cared, and that stood out. But there were also circumstances that, that mercenary type of behavior that you're referring to, that people will default to. There's something cleaner about it, in that if you can remove, it can be a surgical way of looking at it. If you can remove some of that emotion from it, some of that feeling from it, you can optimize the outcome, so to speak. But there are human beings in the mix, right? There are human beings involved in this. And the most wonderful feedback that I ever got from people was, you really care about us. And when you have conversations with people who've been through something that's very upsetting professionally or otherwise, but professionally, they will say, oh, my boss didn't care about me or us. The company in the end didn't care about us, or we're just here to do a job and we don't really matter. So this recurring thought of the importance of caring was resonating with me and was sticking with me. And so when I was doing leadership development, I started to bring more of those elements into the curriculum. In fact, at one time, my opening slide was, "It's not about you." And my point was that if you make it about the people that you're working with and you care about them, the goals that you're seeking, we all have personal goals, we all have responsibilities, but if you make it about the others truly, which is a day-to-day challenge, trust me, but if you ultimately show up with that intention, then you're going to do better as a leader. You're going to do better as a performer, and you're going to have a greater sustainability and longevity with the people that you work with. And so that kept resonating there with me.
I do believe if we were going to be totally honest, most leaders, if they had a similar slide, like a totally honest version of that slide would say, "It's about you," in parentheses, meaning, what can you do for me? And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but that's,
Yeah.
and I think what many leaders don't recognize is that people see it. There's a transparency to it. I have experienced a lot of leaders from the front line to the C-suite who have an amazing ability to put on that face of caring, that face of it's about you, that face of I'm gonna hold you up, I'm gonna celebrate you. But people recognize, that when the mask comes down, and it does come down, if it's fake, if it's not real, and I think one of the times it comes down is when times are tough, when results are tight, when we're struggling a bit, that tends to reveal reality. And someone was asking me a few weeks ago about why employees seem so cynical today, more so than now. Employees have been cynical for a long time. In fact, the cartoonist Scott Adams, he made a fortune off of Dilbert, and and Dilbert, goes back 30 years, and that the whole basis of that was cynical humor regarding the workplace. So it's been around. Maybe it's been around forever, but there's an intensity. It feels like, and this person that was speaking to me said, I feel like I'm hiring people, and they're waiting for me to prove myself now. There was a time when I would hire someone, and they would trust me until I proved them otherwise. They would trust that I am competent, trust that I am trustworthy. And then if I showed otherwise, then they would notice it. But now I hire them, and they're they're looking for any possible sign that I'm not what I say I
Right.
am, or that the company is not what it says it is. And so there is, I think, that deepening level of cynicism. Um, what are you seeing or experiencing in the leadership space, and in terms of today's world, like the post-pandemic world?
Mm.
What are you seeing?
Yeah, as you were speaking, I couldn't help but think that there it almost feels to me like the pandemic, though so upsetting for all of us and scary, there was there were a few silver linings, one of which was that people who were on the road so much had a chance to slow down and be home more often and be present. And that had its downsides too, right?
Mhm.
The home could get a little crazy. But uh, there was this vibe out there of we're all going through the same thing. Your job title may not have mattered so much when you're out there racing around trying to get paper towels,
Mhm.
getting nudged out for paper towels. No, but there was more of a feeling of we're all going through something together. And it's less about what I do for a living, what you do for a living. And boy, it just feels like as we've made our way back into this hybrid mode, although a lot of people are going back to the office,
Mhm.
there's, from what I can tell from talking to clients, from coaching, from spending time in conference rooms with people, the intensity level is even greater. And there's a
Yes.
higher level of cynicism, and there's a higher level of, well, it's just the way it is. And we're just almost in a survival mode on a daily basis. And so what I'm seeing is everyone is sort of on the verge of burnout. And I talk about leadership, and you and I have talked about some of that, some of the negative sides of it. It's not that employees are good and the people in the leadership world or the executives are all bad. It's sort of an integration of some mindsets that
Yeah.
I think have gone and spilled into a place that's not so good, and maybe even a little bit dangerous. So I see people who are just full tilt in every aspect of their lives. They're trying to be uh, the best at their job. They're trying to be, in perfect shape. They're trying to be the greatest mom or dad or partner, to have, an amazing place to live and all the stuff. And it's exhausting. It is exhausting, not to mention the barrage of unexpected phone calls, potential scamming situations or phishing. I've gotten to the point where I'm used to getting these types of things on a regular
Mhm.
basis. And there was a time when the occasional phone call to your house that was a telemarketer was like, how annoying is that? And so I feel like people are under attack from the chaos of the world. And I'm not trying to sound doom and gloom at all. In fact, I'm quite the opposite, but it is exhausting. And I feel for people who are just on that verge of burnout. That's what I see. So if you're right on the edge of that and you're questioning life and you're questioning how things are going in leadership, you are much less likely to be patient. You're
Yeah.
much less likely to show up as your best self and to be looking at the bright side of things and to give people the benefit of the doubt when there's some type of conflict or a perceived conflict or a perceived injustice. And you know, I worry about some of the people that are on that brink, because I've been there.
And
You know,
we'll get to the
sure.
hopeful side of the caring warrior here in a moment. But if you don't mind, I want to wallow in the
Sure, let's
cynicism
do it.
just a
Wow.
little bit longer. And this either speaks to my nature or the nature of the conversations that I have with people. But a young lady, young, she's in her 30s, said to me a few weeks ago, she had gone to totally remote work during the pandemic, and then her company had kept her remote. She was in a sales and marketing position, and uh, she really adjusted to the remote work life well. And she said that her productivity increased, her level of connection she felt with her clients increased. And she said it's not because that she, of course, people love to be able to sometimes, go to lunch in real life or meet a client in real life. But she said she, because she's fairly outgoing and she has a certain way about her, she said, I connect really well with my clients through the virtual interface. And then occasionally I'll travel and occasionally we'll meet them. But she said, I think I'm doing great. But then the company did decide we're all going to come back to the office. And she said it had been over 2 years. And
Mm,
she came back to the office, and she said pre-pandemic, she loved her company. She loved her job. She respected her leaders. She said this, I even liked my cubicle. I liked my cubicle. I had kind of arranged it and uh, to my liking. And she said, my first day back, I sat down and maybe I had just been hypnotized because I didn't realize how brown the office was. It was brown everywhere, beige, gray, brown everywhere. And I didn't realize how uncomfortable my chair was. And I didn't realize I had no sunlight. And I
right.
didn't realize, oh, wait a minute, I have to go way down the hall to get fresh water. All of these things, she said, suddenly it felt like almost like a matrix moment where
Mm,
suddenly you're putting me back in this environment. And I'm realizing that it's not what I thought it was. And then she said the leaders didn't seem as real to me as they used to. He said it was just odd. I noticed, oh, the leaders have the window offices, so they have sunlight. I have my little brown cubicle. And she said she was struggling with her mindset because she
yes.
said, I am really feeling like I don't like it here and I don't like them. And I'm trying to get myself back to that mindset of loving my work, loving my company, loving the people that I work with. But she said I liked working where I had a window and I had access. Oh, and then the final point that she made is I hate Keurig coffee. That's what we have in our break room. I hate Keurig coffee. She said, I love being able to go downstairs and have my own drip brewed coffee. It's my brand. It's my grind. It's suitable for me. And she said, it's not the same when you do it in the morning and you pour it into your jug and you bring it to work. It's not the same. And I felt like when she said, I'd been hypnotized, I feel like I've stepped either out of or into the matrix where I'm seeing a whole new world. I don't think many leaders are meeting this moment. I don't think many leaders are recognizing what people are going through or have gone through and are stepping up their game to lead. You had a phrase. Um, I'll find it. I had written this phrase down, but it was basically um, leading with depth, being a deep leader of influence. And I just think that leaders have to up their game in this new environment.
Was it deep connection?
Yes, yes, yes. Deep connection.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's the key in influence. And I'll say, I'll just take the word leadership ultimately comes down, in my opinion, to positive influence. And the Harvard professor, author, Amy Cuddy, she's one of my favorite
Mhm.
lines ever, says that warmth is the conduit of influence. And boy, that doesn't sound like leadership 101. That sounds really fluffy,
Mhm.
but I love it. I'm all about it because that deep connection with people and that level of trust and that feeling of we're in this together. That means that whether someone's in their pajamas at home and they're making their homebrew coffee, or they're out uh, doing something in the field for their job, meeting with customers, making sure that things are running well at a particular manufacturing plant or whatever, that deep connection means that it really doesn't matter where you are. You're engaged in doing what's best, doing what's right for the organization, doing what's right for yourself, and doing good work for your teammates, for the manager, the leader, the supervisor, whatever, because of that deep connection. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be conflicts. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be missteps along the way, misunderstandings. That's life. But that to me is that's sort of the highway. That deep connection is the runway, I should say, to that work. Now, to the hybrid model has been something I've been very fortunate to have most of my career. I had my brown office with no light, and I felt caged. It was a little bit of a prison for me because I have lots of energy, nervous energy,
Mhm.
and I felt a little bit caged. What I loved about being in an office is I loved the camaraderie. I loved seeing people and having a chance to joke around and catch up a little bit. And oftentimes you can walk down the hallway and have a conversation face to face. You're not texting, you're not emailing, you're not on the phone or on Zoom. You're having a live conversation. Um, so I love that. I love a mixture of it. And I'll tell you, I do drink a lot more coffee when I'm working from home. So
Yeah.
your friend there is onto something. But to your point about leaders and how they can deal with this, or maybe how they should consider dealing with it, is to keep some openness as opposed to an all or nothing type of scenario. I can't speak to all the circumstances, and I certainly understand that commercial real estate, empty offices in big cities and
Mhm.
wherever, I have empathy for them as well. But for people to be able to work um, in the environment where they're going to be most productive and feel trusted,
Yeah.
I often feel like when you feel trusted and someone cares about you, you're going to do that much more. And I saw that in sports. I've seen that in my travels, and I hear it from coaching clients. They say those types of things, and they're often leaders. They're often executives, and they feel it. So it's not an easy one to fix, but I guess in a very general way, I would say be open to it and utilize the tools that we have. Do you remember that we used to all do teleconferences pretty much before
I do. Yeah. We,
COVID?
we, we would gather around a conference table with those the little triangular phone. Yeah.
Yeah. And now there's something, I'm not saying it beats face to face, but the ability to look at somebody and have a meeting this way to me is so much better than being on the phone.
Although I
It's a
will
little
say,
more dangerous when you're driving.
I think it's a very
Don't do that.
specific
Don't do
skill
that.
set. Yeah, agreed. And I
Yeah.
think it's a specific skill set that if you can master connection virtually,
Yes.
but that really does take a lot of attention, because I still have colleagues who get on meetings with clients and all you see is the little circular photo of them. They don't share their webcam. um, they they don't recognize that there's a kind of an energy loss, across the virtual environment. So you might need to dial up your animation a bit. You might need to,
Yep.
you need, it's a show. It's a bit of a show, and you have to be
Yeah.
willing to do the show, accept the theater. If not, if you just show up without that thought, you're not going to create connections with people. And
Yep.
also then going out of your way to ask deeper questions, listen more thoughtfully, engage more thoughtfully, have deeper conversations. All of those things are learnable and they produce great results. But if you lack them or you don't focus on those skills, you end up with very shallow
Yeah.
engagements. And then you have a company that looks at their results and says, clearly we have a challenge. We need to bring everyone back to the office. But the
Yeah.
issue, the root cause may not be in or out of the office. It may be a lack of specific skills.
Well, and you raised something. My wife is a teacher, and I admire her so much for what she does. The classroom work and all the challenges each day. It's such an important job. During the time that everyone was at home, the teachers had to adjust to a completely new way of educating.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have training, really. They had to jump right in. God bless them. I think as it relates to the corporate world or other industries, I should say, there also wasn't training. I mean, there might have been some technical training on how to use Teams or Zoom or some other technology, but there really wasn't training on how to run a good meeting. In fact,
Yeah.
I did those types of things in leadership development. I'm sure you have as well. But how to run a great Zoom meeting is something that is very different. And I have found that my preparation for virtual meetings has to be better. It has to be more thought out, it has to be more inclusive. And the preparation prior to and the involvement of other people prior to is a skill. It's an art, actually, because if you just show up for a meeting, then there's a lot of ambiguity, and someone can have that picture on and they could be totally tuned out doing whatever.
I think if I were to
forethought.
reread,
Yeah.
if I were to reread The Caring Warrior with just the virtual world in mind, I think there is a lot there that a person can take away if you're asking yourself, how do I create those deep human connections with the limitations of a virtual world, and apply all of the principles, all of the concepts. It's doable, but it, like you've said, it requires more. It requires a different way. I want to. I'm gonna ask your forgiveness for just being cynical one more time, and then we're gonna shift to hope. Honestly,
there's a lot to be thought about these days. It's not.
The Caring Warrior is a hopeful book, and it's you had mentioned that you're rewriting it, so there'll be a new edition coming out. But just the current edition, downloadable on Kindle, I can say from personal experience, and it's a great read. But I think I wrote down one of the phrases early on in the book. You mentioned that it seemed, and this is talking about like before the epiphany that you had, the phrase, it seemed like the bullies had taken over the playground. And sometimes it can feel like that, but I've worked for businesses where the leaders were clearly bullies. And I would say those leaders, not my favorite, but there's another set of leaders that I dislike even more. And that's the leaders who put on the face of a caring leader, put on the face of, hey, we're a family. It's all about us together. We win together. And then suddenly when things aren't going great, there's a rug pull. And I think I know a lot of employees have felt burned. I thought I could trust him.
Mm.
I felt like I was part of the team. I contributed so much. I gave my all because it was all about us. And then suddenly the rug is pulled. And then I realize, oh, it's not about us. It's about her, or it's about him. And while the rest of us found faltered or lost our jobs, he still walks away with his golden parachute. G still walks away with hers. And so there's, I think those types of leaders, and it's unfortunate because, like, there's a certain theater to leadership. And so there are going to be some people who have that ability to put on a great show, but the show is, for them, it's not real. It is a show. And when the mask comes off, people get hurt. And so I would say those to me are the worst leaders. And then the people you recognize as bullies, you at least protect yourself from them. You know how to engage with them. But what your spirit and philosophy leads us toward is being leaders who are authentically connected at a deep level with our people and with our customers and with our business, authentically caring about our people, our customer, our business. So I guess share with us, to the degree you can in 30 minutes or so, the philosophy of the caring warrior.
First of all, it's aspirational. To me, to be a caring warrior is something to strive for. The paradox of a warrior with the word caring doesn't typically go normally or naturally together. But I love it because it means that someone shows up fiercely with strong convictions and strong intentions for good, and to, in a practical level, do a really good job, but in the service of others. And I see a caring warrior as not just sort of a heroic figure, but really the mentor of the story. I will often say that the hero of a story is not the leader. It's the person that they have the opportunity to be a positive influence on. And so that warrior spirit is there, a protector, someone who looks at conflict and looks at difficulty as an opportunity for growth and for learning. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of individual that has self-control, has the ability to be that lighthearted voice, that kind voice, that sense of humor, perhaps in those difficult times. And by the same token, when things are floundering, things are going sideways, this is also the kind of individual that can show up and help get things back on course. So I have no problem with the other types of leadership styles. I've read about them. I've learned from them. I just love embedding that feeling of caring in there, because ultimately that is an act of self-love, but it's an act of showing up in the world with that sense of love, but not in a way that's weak and fuzzy and uncertain. There's a firmness about it.
Is it learnable? I mean, there are going to be
Absolutely.
Some people for whom it's naturally the way they are. I guess talk to us just a little bit about your experience in helping people evolve into being this.
Yeah, I would say that it's the best in all of us. I would argue that it's the way that most of us want to be. It's that authentic self. It's if you were to remove so many of the fears and the insecurities and the, even the traumas that we've experienced inside and outside of our working life, a caring warrior is the kind of person that we would strive to be. And there are great examples in history of this, but I would say the biggest challenge is to overcome that, all the reasons that we can stay smaller, stay scared, afraid of maybe speaking up respectfully at a meeting and challenging something, standing up for somebody in a circumstance where it's just not appropriate. I do have a story I'd love to share with you about
Please.
a time that was very difficult to deal with that. And I'd love for your listeners to get a sense for where I even came up with the idea of it. A wonderful moment in my life. But I'll just share with you that a leader came from the corporate office into my area, my sales area. And I was privileged to have a great team and a high performing team. And two particular individuals were tagged, if you will, to have dinner with the leader and to get feedback on how things are going and choices that the company's made and where we're headed. It was a real nice concept. And so I felt like it made sense for me to not be part of this, just for the chance that my presence might impact the dialogue in some way. I wanted these individuals to have their chance to be with that senior level executive. And no, you have to be there. Really want you to be there. And so we go out to dinner, and it's a great, fun place. And the margaritas were on the table, and the dialogue began to turn toward, okay, so let's hear your feedback. Let's see what you think about this particular direction that we're headed and this forecast and this marketing message, that type of thing. And as the input got more and more, they came prepared, right? They had their thoughts and their ideas, and these are super high performers and great people, always in very good standing. And long story short is that it turned into this individual like pointing across the table because they didn't like the feedback that they were getting. And I thought at that moment, this doesn't matter what my job is. It doesn't matter what that person's title is. This is a human situation, and it's not okay. And I stood up and I said, dinner's over. And we walked out. Of course, I didn't sleep that night. I was upset about it. I was afraid I would lose my job. But at the same time, something inside me, that sort of warrior spirit, was like, it was what I had to do, come what may. And I don't, want to purport that I've handled every situation well, that I have always been calm, cool, and collected. But that's just that's a microcosm of some things that can happen.
Well, so I think what we all want to know is, how did it end up? So at the next morning, did you still have a job?
I did.
Okay.
And the beautiful thing about it was that the individual came to have breakfast with me and apologized and said I was out of line and I was feeling defensive because I'm so intricately involved in these decisions that are being made. And though I wanted the feedback and I do value these people, essentially I was too attached to my own decisions and my own part in the way that things currently are. and their feedback was actually quite good. So I ultimately felt that I had done the right thing. I, took a lot of deep breaths that day. It was tough, but I appreciated that next phase. And I don't tell the story to pick on that particular individual. I use it as an example of times that can happen in our careers and times when in life we know something's not right. We have that sixth sense that maybe we're also not treating somebody right, or something's happening that doesn't feel right. And I would say, listen to that instinct and be courageous. And that can come in so many different forms. It doesn't have to be in the midst of a conflict. It can be sort of a slow burn of, this isn't right for me. I'm not in an environment. I'm not in a culture that's right for me. Maybe I'm not doing day-to-day work that suits my desires and skills and abilities. And all of us, we have such a tendency to let the fear of the unknown come in. And, people have asked me, what is it? What's your motivation? And where does this stuff come from? And of course, the archetype of the caring warrior is sort of there. And I'll tell you how I got to that in a second. But I really want to help people find that beauty inside of them. And that beauty is that courageous, authentic self that shows up more often, not always, but more often. I always say, try to improve your batting average of showing up in the world, showing up with your loved ones, the people you work with. If you're in a leadership role, the people that look to you for guidance and look to you for good example and trust and all that. If your batting average is higher, then you're doing pretty well. So I've got these two things here behind me, and I'll say that I was at a leadership retreat that I was running with rising leaders. These were high-performing individual contributors who were identified by the organization, by the, junior executives as well as future leaders. And it was an amazing week. I invited what I'll call a modern day samurai, an expert on Japanese history, but also a very highly accomplished martial artist. And we used the Bushido code of the samurai to teach some of the concepts of good leadership. For example, courage, honor, respect, doing for others. And people who don't maybe know a lot about samurai just think about, the warrior, the high conflict taking of life and battles and that type of thing. But there's so much there. There's so many deeper concepts. So at the end of this week, I remember feeling sad that it was ending. This, I'll call him a samurai. He got up and he presented to me this plaque back here with these symbols on it that translate to Katsu Jin Ken in Japanese, which means the life-giving sword. And he said to me,
Wow,
you're not a life-taking sword, TJ. You're a life-giving sword. And that was a beautiful thing. And it's something that has continued to stick with me. Now, maybe when he does this type of thing, he has a trunk full of those, but that for me, it just stuck. A couple weeks later, I got a samurai sword in the mail from the class, from the group of people that were at
wow, okay.
and it's over here in my office. It's beautiful. But these were things that I just took in and thought, that was a great experience. This is beautiful. And a couple years down the line, I was traveling a ton. I was in a very upsetting culture, lots of pending change, pending layoffs. It was just a really bad environment. And I was traveling a lot and 4 young children at the time. And I was burning out and I was very unhappy inside. And so I went out on a Saturday morning and started to do some work in the yard, and I collapsed, completely unaware that this was going to happen. It was fast, but also slow motion. And I went down and I was sobbing and overwhelmed with emotion and also exasperated. What's happening? Am I having a panic attack? Am I dying? Am I, in the end, what I realized was that I was anxious. I was depressed. I was dealing with grief that I hadn't let myself go through. I had lost my father and a very important stepfather also in my life in a really short period of time. And I was just overwhelmed with life and all the striving, and I wasn't taking care of myself at all. And, coming to terms with being depressed, being anxious, not just the words, but truly going through that, all that stuff was very, very humbling. And in the midst of this really dark time, I remembered the life-giving sword, and I had the plaque. And when it dawned on me, I had this overwhelming feeling of, that's what it's all about for me. That's who I am. And I always thought, Dan, that my sensitivity, those feelings of sadness when I would leave a room after a meeting that was just yucky, or circumstances that just didn't feel right, I thought, well, I'm just an idealist and I'm a softie. And I thought all those things made me weak.
Well, in fact, I wrote down, and so it's fascinating. I wrote down as I was reading your book, this is a quote from you. I felt ashamed for being so sensitive, too deep, too soft at the core. I thought caring made me lesser. And I have to tell you, that I wrote it down because it struck me. So I just wanted to share that.
I still get, chills thinking about it. It's actually strong to allow that vulnerability to surface. And I think we all have it. Now, I know that we all have it. We all question ourselves. We all have those moments where we either do or we're about to fall down on the ground like I did. It's a symbol of the human experience, and it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to wake up. It's an opportunity to say, okay, I am going through what I'm going through. I am who I am. I was made this way, and I need to at least embrace it and give it a real shot at becoming more of the kind of person that I want to be.
I think applying that life-giving sword spirit first to yourself and then to the people who work with you and for you, and then potentially even upstream, like the story that you told previously, you helped that leader. You actually helped him, I think, see a part of his own humanity. Now, that's not going to work with every leader. It's not, because not everybody is ready for the message. But it feels to me like going back to the very beginning of our conversation, we live in a world right now where this message is so important because the pace is faster, the complexity is greater. The mercenary spirit is so prevalent, um, and yet we're all human. We are all humans going through our own version of the journey that you describe. And I think there's a yearning for that kind of deep leadership. I think there's a yearning for a leader who knows me, who sees me, who values me authentically, and you can still hold me accountable. You can still correct me. You can still guide me.
Yep.
Y- you can even still fire me. Because
No.
sometimes that's what needs to happen. But do it with a sense of human connection. Um, I it's a shame that that's as rare as it is, or seems to be as rare as it seems.
Yeah, it is, and it's easy to start to fall into that cynicism for sure, and I struggle with that myself. But I do believe that it is the innate better side of each of us, and it isn't the vulnerability piece, the emotions piece, is really about that humanity, that whatever job title, whatever circumstance, whatever income level someone has, fame, notoriety, or the people who feel alone and isolated, that is our true authentic self. And I think that from the majority, people want to be more of that. And that doesn't mean we're going to show up in a meeting room or an auditorium or wherever and just have a big group hug.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a professional crier, but I'm not saying we need to be weeping all the time. I love to have a good time. I love to laugh, but you can show up in that place, whether it's a virtual, in the kitchen of your home, and have convictions and believe in things and set goals and apply your efforts toward those goals, held each other accountable, as you said. Doesn't mean that if somebody's not working out in a team that there may be a circumstance where they need to be removed from the company, or holding people to a higher standard when they're not living up to it, or to be held to that myself. So I don't ever want this caring warrior, life-giving sword concept to sound weak or soft, or if anything, it is even more purposeful because it's coming from that true self, and that individual who wants to make things better, wants to behave more often in a way that they can feel proud of and that others can respond to. Not perfection, but a greater effort toward that. And I just want to say, you were in the service, and thank you for that. I don't know how you ever managed to be in a submarine. I can't even comprehend that. But you mentioned people leaving the service. I just want to say that there's an area of need. Former service women and men coming out and making that transition into civilian life. That has to be a very, very difficult life transition. And I would love to see
it's a huge challenge for many people, and it's becoming more so in today's world, again, because of the increased complexity, increased pace and speed. No one gives you 6 months to get your sea legs in the new place. They hire you because they expect you to perform or do the work that you were hired for. And so I agree. I feel like TJ, I feel like this is a great therapy session, and I'm the quasi therapist where the clock is just dinged, and I have to say our time is up. And it's like that feeling of disappointment. Like, this should go on. This should be. So I would say to those of you who this resonates with, first of all, grab the book, download the book, buy the book. It's available in paperback. And but I want you to share one last story, if you will, because somehow Gail King got a hold of your book, and every author would dream of national recognition like this. So can you tell that story? How does Gail King get a hold of The Caring Warrior?
Wow. Yeah, that was amazing. Now, I'm going back a few years. I don't know if everybody will remember this, but Arthur Blank is the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. When they played in the Super Bowl, he brought the entire organization to the Super Bowl. And in the lead up to that, Gail had him on CBS to find out what his thoughts were about that and why he wanted to do that. And simultaneously, someone who had read the book and liked it gave her the book. She had read it right around that time frame, and lo and behold, she had the book with her when she interviewed him and had taken those notes and everything. Yeah. And someone at CBS that knew someone that I knew got a picture and sent it to me, and I'm still dragging myself up off the floor, because I was very honored that she read the book and found value in it enough to utilize it in a situation like that.
Well, it's a message that resonated then. I think it resonates even more today, for sure. So I'll make sure we include more details on the book in the show notes, and a link to the Amazon page. Although you can just go to Amazon and search The Caring Warrior, and you'll find it. This has been fantastic. So thank you so much. And it honestly feels like this is probably a conversation we will want to continue at some point in the future.
I love it.
And just dive even deeper. So last point, I'm going to show it one more time. The Caring Warrior, available almost anywhere you can get other fine books. And with that, that ends today's episode of Leadership Disrupted. Be sure to, if you enjoyed this episode, like the episode, subscribe to the channel, share the episode. Anything that you can do to increase our exposure would be, of course, deeply, deeply appreciated. And I will be grateful to you, TJ. This is fantastic. So we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, my friend. This was great.